Okay, so this video is going to cover Come Follow Me for Doctrine and Covenants, section 77 through 80. Now, the purpose of these Come Follow Me series is to use the scriptures to discern actionable steps for a joyful, purpose driven life grounded in God. So, what this video is going to offer that other videos might not is quick, actionable steps using the scriptures to using the scriptures to identify actionable steps that can improve your life and lead to more joy and a life grounded in God. And to do that today, we are going to look at the book of Revelation and discuss the ideas presented therein, particularly when it comes to the imagery of the four beasts. So our roadmap is going to be discussing the meaning of the four beasts and then applying that. So the four beasts we learn about in chapter 4. And John, seeing this vision, describes, and he writes, out of the throne room proceeded lightnings and thunderings and voices, and there were 7 lamps of fire burning before the throne, which are the 7 spirits of God. And before the throne there was a sea of glass like unto crystal, and in the midst, that is in the middle of the throne and around about the throne, were 4 beasts full of eyes before and behind. So the imagery here was taken from ChatGPT. This is not in any way meant to say this is an accurate depiction. It's accurate in the sense that it uh, incorporates or includes the images just to give you a sense, and it includes the descriptions to give you a sense of what it will, to give you an idea of what John might have seen. I'm also aware that there are 5 beasts instead of, even though there are 4 listed in Revelation. That was just an error by ChatGPT. I tried to get one with 4, but then I ran out of the image feature, and I tried multiple times, and for some reason ChatGPT can't count. So, anyways, we're gonna have 5 here, but John saw 4 beasts, and the beasts are described as we can see. There is a beast like a lion. There's a beast like a calf. Beast that has a face like a man, and a beast like a flying eagle. And all these beasts have eyes all around it, and then they also have 6 wings, and that's something that ChatGPT also failed to include. So it's not just 2 wings, but it'd be 6. So the question for us is obviously, and we're probably like, what's going on here? Why are these 4 beasts? What does this matter? How is this relevant? Well, the important thing to understand with these beasts is that these beasts are representations of an idea. So Joseph Smith explained what the meaning of beasts is in the scriptures. And what he explains is that when the prophets are describing seeing beasts, they're not actually saying like they're literally there are beasts in heaven, but it's an image or figure of beast. And so really this image of seeing beasts are describing an idea, and that is frequently found in the book of Revelation, where John sees multiple different imagery, and that imagery is not to be taken literal, such as the harlot on the beast. There's no harlot on a beast, it's representing an idea of Babylon and so forth. We don't need to get into it, but the idea is, the point is that the imageries that John sees are representing an idea. And so, what is this idea? Well, we learn from Doctrine and Covenants, fortunately, that the eyes on the beast represent light and knowledge, and the wings represent power to move, to act, etc. So, eyes are knowledge, which makes sense. The eyes are what you see, what you perceive, what you're able to interpret. The eyes serve as your vision, as your aim. It's all related to knowledge, and that's a common idea even in non-scripture, in non-ancient scripture sources. Eyes represent knowledge. And then the wings are the ability to move and act. So our question obviously is, why does knowledge matter? And it really comes down to two ideas: freedom and the ability to withstand suffering and hardship. So we learn from Doctrine and Covenants section 93, which we'll discuss later, is that knowledge consists of things as they are and as they were and as they are to come. So knowledge is really referring to reality. And as the science fiction writer Philip K. Dick put it, and I think it's helpful, reality is that which, when you stop believing in it, doesn't go away. And so reality is simply what is. Whether you close your eyes, whether your eyes are open, whether there are certain things that will always exist and there's nothing you can do about it. And that is the knowledge that we are to acquire. We are to acquire knowledge about reality, about how things really are. And agency, which, if we go back, when it's talking about this idea of wings, one of the ideas conveyed is the idea of agency. The power, movement, action, that all goes to agency, your ability to act, to move, to influence things, to be a cause instead of an object, to be a mover instead of one moved. All those ideas are bound up in the concept of agency. And so agency is the ability to act simply, and there is high agency and there's low agency. And so to understand why knowledge is important, we need to understand this about God's kingdom, which I've discussed before. I think in a previous slide, I talked about how there is greater agency in God's kingdom. But what I didn't discuss and share is how greater knowledge is commensurate with greater agency. Or should I say, knowledge is commensurate with agency, or the degree of knowledge is commensurate with the degree of agency. So the more knowledge you have, the more agency you have. And the lesser knowledge you have, the lesser agency. And reminder, when I'm talking about knowledge, I'm not talking about trivia. I'm not talking about information. I'm talking about knowledge of reality. The more you know about reality, the freer you become. And so what we really have here is that knowledge leads to agency. And here's why. So I have this circle here, and this is a circle of, well, two circles. You have the black circle, which is reality. And really, maybe you could fill this whole page, but you get the idea is you have reality, and that's just existing. It's just what is. It's things as they have been, are, and will be. And that's all around us, and that doesn't change. And reality can change in the sense that things can change reality, but reality is there. There's nothing we can do. This isn't constructed. There is an objective truth. There is objective things that exist in the universe and coexist with God. And each of us has a certain understanding of this reality, but it differs depending on the person. And so the idea here in this diagram is to show that there's reality, and then we have a present awareness. And as you can see, reality far surpasses what we're presently aware for most of us, right? And so our awareness is minor compared to what is. And in light of that, we can be overcome by reality because things can occur that we don't anticipate, that we're not prepared for. Things happen that we might have to shake our head in amazement, or bow our head in amazement, in any type of shock, stun, awe. We've all had it. We've had moments where we feel like the rug has been pulled out from under us, and we have to ask, why is this happening to me? And when we ask those questions, why is it happening? That's really a question as to, I'm not understanding reality. There's something going on that I was not aware of, and it's affecting me. And it's often, often the suffering we experience comes from this overwhelming flood of reality, which I, in other slides, have labeled as chaos, right? And that's what you can think about as well. Is this reality is chaos. It's things that are just existing, and we have certain knowledge within that, but until we get a full knowledge, we are bound to be overcome. And so God exists in this state where reality and his present awareness are one and the same. You can take faith in God because God knows all things. There is nothing that can shake him. He is aware of all reality, all chaos, and his character does not change but remains the same. He does not change who he is. He does not deviate from his knowledge of truth, from his knowledge of just principles, from his integrity. He remains who he is. And that's what makes God God. So, as you can see, knowledge allows us to withstand reality. It allows us to overcome what's currently overcoming us. So, when it comes to gathering knowledge, what we're discussing here, and when it comes to reality, is the mysteries of God, essentially. It is how things work. Uh, you can see in the scriptures often when God visits people or when people are brought to his presence, he teaches them about the ordering of the cosmos. He did that with Abraham. He does that in other apocryphal works. And the idea is that God is showing these people how the universe works. And he's revealing to them his mysteries. But before we can receive the mysteries of God, we first must understand his character. And that's where many of us go astray, is we want to get so into the deep stuff of the gospel that we miss what is most important, which is God's character. Because once we understand God's character, then God will teach us the full mysteries, which encompasses his character, but also encompasses his works and how things are. And so the key to understand his character is we must presently obey what is before us, because it is what is before us is the thing that if we acquire, adapt, and assimilate into our lives, we become more like God. And as we become more like God, we understand his character. And when we fully understand his character, God is able to reveal the other things. So, how can you presently obey what is before you? And I think it's an iterative process. And so, in closing this, to identify God's character, to identify what is present before you, ask these two questions. First, what can you improve in your life? Take stock, take an inventory of your life. Look at things that you can improve on. And this can be as basic as cleaning your room, or it can be a little more advanced, such as being a better parent, or it can be even further advanced as your career, or you could look at how you respond to trials. Again, trials are a very beautiful way of showing what you lack and therefore what you can improve. Because the essence of adopting God's character is improvement. The second way of identifying what is presently before us is to identify what is currently overcoming us. That kind of goes back into the trials. Are there situations in life that we cannot handle yet? Situations that are currently causing us immense stress, suffering, difficulty, sorrow, heartache. If that's the case, then that's a sign to you that you are missing a piece of reality. There is some false belief that you adopted that's distorting your view and you're not seeing things correctly. Because once you start seeing things correctly, then you start to understand why it happens, and then you're able to respond to that. And it's not as surprising as it would be if you didn't have that. And so, as we close out this video, I want you to ask yourself these questions. What can you do to improve your life right now? And or what is currently overcoming you? And by identifying those things, you identify the things that are most present for you, that are before you, and that are actually keeping you, or you could say, well, one's keeping you from growing in God, in the case of overcoming, or is the stepping stone to adopting God's character, growing in knowledge, and being able to withstand what is out there, what currently is.